I love you, Heartworm.
Obviously, my 6-year-old being on the spectrum, and now we have a week-old child as well. So one thing I'm seeing adjustment wise, at first my son was really excited, like through my wife's pregnancy, but the last couple of days I have sensed some jealousy. And then also one thing that's interesting is when my son cries, because he does cry a lot, it's very sensitive to my son's ears. So we've been putting his headphones on quite often. And then also he'll leave the room. So typically he'll play like in the living room with his toys for the time being until it's time for bed. He's actually been taking all his stuff to the back because he doesn't want to hear the crying. So I'm interested just to hear from the fathers with multiple children, or just anybody with a perspective who can relate as far as like what happens in your household. Are you seeing those similar patterns as well? Just because I'm only a couple days into it.
Yeah, I think it's indirectly that happens in my house. Like it's, my kids, I got 4 kids total. So Emiliano being the youngest, being on the spectrum, and then I got my older 3. And I think sometimes early on, probably not now, but early on, I don't want to say there was a sense of jealousy, but I think maybe a little bit of sense of annoyance a little bit, because he was always getting the attention. And I mean, he was getting attention for a reason, but it's, the annoyance was there of like, okay, I know he's my little brother. I understand he got this going on, but what about me over here? What about me over here? And so I think it is difficult trying to navigate that, because if you're lucky enough to be in it, like it's me and my wife, right? Some people don't have those situations where they have a 2-parent household. They might be raising their kids, single parent household. But for me and my wife, it is difficult because we always spread thin with just everything outside of our kids, right? So we're talking just life responsibilities, work, health, other family things going on. So we always got something going on. So we always spread thin, and we try to give as much attention we can to our kids. But it's tough, man. Like, it's hard to navigate, man, especially when you're dealing with kids getting older, that puberty kick in. Then, maybe your son trying to try you. You be like, hold on, Playboy, trying to try me. You know what I'm saying? Then, you may have a daughter, and, she going through her hormones things, and your wife trying to handle it, and you trying to step in, and you just kind of back. It's all kind of stuff going on, man. So, yeah, it's tough to navigate. It really is. And, I don't think there is a book or a podcast or anyone with an answer. I think it's just, you just do the best you can and pray to God you don't, jack somebody's life up in the process.
Yeah. I think, Lonnie, you got multiple kids, right? You got a mixed neurotypical, neurodivergent.
My oldest is 10, and the twins are 7. But I think it's the main thing right now, though, is to spend time one-on-one with your older kid. Give him some quality time out the house away from the kid. And we brought like a bunch of gifts. And every day the kids and our babies would give a gift to our oldest kid. So he associated them with, they bringing me toys, whatever. So he'd be over there in the cribs, moving them out the way, trying to find toys. But he didn't look at them as like taking, more time away from him. But he looked at it as, they were bringing me something. And so that helped with the transition. So even today, the biggest thing is trying to make sure everyone gets some time, one-on-one time out the house. So we'll take one kid here, one kid on a trip. And so I think that might help a lot if you did that.
Yeah, I feel like, Travis, maybe you're at the tip of the iceberg, because with us, my eldest is 3. He's about to be 4 in January. We got a 17-month-old. And then when we first brought our youngest home, my son was kind of looking at him, poking at him, interested. But yeah, just like you, whenever, the baby would cry, he would start yelling, screaming, getting real anxious. And then eventually, he got desensitized to it. We didn't pay it too much attention because, every time that happens, you're not going to pick him up, take him to another room. Like that's just not realistic. Like, babies cry. That's just what they do. So eventually, like he got desensitized to it. He ended up working through it. And then what we're starting to see now is it's funny because the little one just watches him, and then he starts kind of taking after him and doing some of the stuff that he does. But when we're like out, or we're on going to the store or whatever, and then my son wants something, who is autistic, and then our other son, so far, we don't think he's autistic. We think he's neurotypical, but we try not to make it, just trying not to make it a backseat situation. So anytime, like, we don't just completely just ignore our youngest son. His name is Teddy. We don't just ignore him, but we do explain, like, hey, like, Arrow's our oldest. He learns differently, or his brain works differently, and he needs a little more support and this and that. But we also don't want to just, accommodate and just bend the knee, to Arrow, every single time. So I think that's important too, to try to make that, like, that separation, and try to keep it as equal as possible, even though, not every situation is going to be like that, because, like, he does have different needs than Teddy does.
Okay.
I'll say this. Excuse me. I don't have multiple children. I only have one child. But, I think some of the practices that neurotypical families, or families with neurotypical children, are kind of similar. Whereas every child needs their own time. Like, Lonnie was saying earlier. Yes, you have your family time where everybody's together. But I know growing up, for me and my siblings, there was time that my parents designated just for me. It didn't have to be anything more than an hour. That hour was just, my time to spend with my mom, and my brothers. They had their time to spend with my mom, just by themselves. And then we spent time as a family. And so I think when we're talking about this situation, what we're really talking about is balance, and the balancing act of how it's going to happen between your newborn and your child that's already on, diagnosed on the spectrum. And that's basically what that's going to come down to. What that balance looks like, though, is going to be dependent upon the atmosphere that you and your wife set, and how you all want your household to run. So at the end of the day, I think all parents, all respectable parents, just want their children to be loved and show love. And as long as, in my book, as long as you're doing that and doing the best you can by your children, it's all going to work out for the best.
Hey, I 100% agree with you. And just so the audience don't know, hey, welcome back to another episode of AutisHim, Black Fathers and Autism. We are talking about having a kid on the spectrum, but also having siblings that you have to try to navigate time with your children. And so I want to add something as far as, like, on the flip side, because I believe that Emiliano, my youngest, and then my oldest, they all learn from each other. So, like, kids are the best teachers. Like, I don't care what nobody say. So, like, my son followed what his older siblings did, and it taught him a lot. It taught him a lot, like, when it came to speech, things that, he couldn't say at first, and then he started saying them because he was just copying his older siblings. And I believe that they learned a lot from him, especially when it comes, like, with patience. Like, they learned a lot of patience because of him. And so I think on the positive side, they both learn from each other, right? And another thing too, like, when it comes to, like Nick was saying, like, you gotta do the best you can. Hey, look, man, I done messed up plenty of times. Like, just totally forgot about certain things that, like, my kids were doing, whether it was the homework or whether it was, like, there was somewhere they needed to be or something like that. And I've totally forgot because all my focus was on my youngest. And I mean, I think it's okay. Like, it's okay because it's a learning opportunity, right? You can learn that, hey, I got to have that balance. I got to maybe have a schedule. I got to make sure that all my kids are trying to get the same amount of time. And, I think as kids get older, they understand, right? Like, they understand, like, okay, that mommy and daddy, or, or your partner or whoever, they have to, spend time with, my younger brother or sister because, of this, situation or whatever the case may be. At least I hope they would understand as they get older, because we try to educate our older kids as much as we can about their younger brothers, so that, when we're no longer here, you got to have a support system. You got to have somebody that's going to take care of them. So, yeah, man, it's definitely a balance. And I think I hear a lot of parents say if they have a kid on the spectrum, they don't you're afraid to have another one because, you know, having 2 kids or having 3 kids on the spectrum is a lot. And, you know, it's hard for me to always comment on that because I understand it. I understand like the time it takes if you have multiple children on a spectrum. But for me, man, like, and we all fathers on here, when your child is born, man, my mom used to tell me, she used to like, I would die for you. My mom used to tell me that all the time. And I was like, I hear you, mom, you know, and she was like, you don't understand how much I love you. And then when my son was born and like when I had my kids, like I understood it. I was like, oh, this is what this feels like. You know, it's kind of crazy. So I think that just as fathers, man, we do the best that we can. And, you know, we try to just, you know, because I know I didn't jack my kids up mentally a little bit, you know, my crazy self. I hope they can get through it in therapy. But anyway, yeah, you know, it's you know, we fathers, we do what we can, man. We do what we can. So I would encourage any father out there, have more kids, man. If you want more kids, have more kids. Like Lonnie said earlier, if you're shooting blanks, get medical help. You know what I'm saying? And try to rejuvenate yourself. To get back on track, man. Get back on track.
Yeah, no, that's perfect perspective, man. I appreciate you guys sharing that. One thing me and my wife talked about is actually, you know, since this is my oldest son's like last Christmas, pretty much we'll look at it until he starts really sharing with his younger brother. We're gonna really hone in on this Christmas. So that kind of, you know, brings up another topic. How are you guys handling the holidays with your family? Like, for example, we're just coming off Thanksgiving. And we know everybody has those people in their family. They understand your child is autistic. They don't understand. They just think maybe they're bad and there's some other stuff going on. So my aunt gets it. My mom gets it. My grandmother, she's from the old school. So if you're not listening, then it's all bad, you know. So, you know, she's kind of yelling and kind of on 10. And we're like, hey, he understands, but just kind of chill a bit, you know. So, I mean, how do you guys handle, you know, having your child around your family for the holidays?
Yeah, I think that's a really good one to get into. I know for us, you know, we try to really create like that really supportive bubble, and you know, when you come to our party, you're gonna dance to our music, and you know, like you're not gonna just be coming in saying this, that, and you know, the other thing, and we try to explain, and you know, I'm not gonna sit here and just be, you know, the autistic whisperer. And I was saying, you know, in our house, the bubble we create, we just try to really come from a place of, you know, just like learning, education. But, you know, I'm not about to be, you know, Dr. Google or none of that stuff. So, you know, we just try to say like, you know, our son, you know, is autistic. So we use kind of identity affirming, you know, language. It's not something he'll grow out of, you know, anything like that. This is what you can expect. And then also, I think, Trav, the other thing that, you know, I start to think about too is when you got an autistic kid and you have a neurotypical kid, some of those supports and strategies, you know, how different would those actually look like? Because my autistic kid, you know, when he gets his haircut, you know, he gets pretty anxious and he has some behaviors. So I made a social story, you know, to just explain to him like, hey, this is what we do. This is how you can act after the haircut. This is what you can expect, all that. And then I was like, oh, this would be good for any kid, you know, like, so some of those supports that happen, you know, turning lights down, music down, even during COVID, how there's not that many people at the malls, and, you know, like that space and environment is a lot more friendly. That's not only applicable to, you know, the neurodivergent community, that could be for everybody. So how much different really is it, you know, with some of those strategies and supports and things that we learn in ABA from implementing even on your neurotypical son or daughter. So I think that's the other thing that kind of got me thinking too.
I mean, at the end of the day, for us, holidays, the majority of the time we spend with my family, and everybody in my family knows my son is on the spectrum. Nobody really treats him any differently than they would, you know, another child. But this year, we're actually going to see my wife's family for the holidays. And most of them know that my son is on the spectrum, but we'll see how they interact with him. I have other, I have cousins-in-laws, or my wife's cousins. They have, some of them have children on the spectrum as well. So, this isn't the first time my wife's family has been dealing or interacting with children that are on the spectrum. What ends up happening is all of the children get, placed in a given area and they play together, and, we'll see how the children interact with one another regarding the holiday season. But in my experience, with my wife's family and my own children are just kind of like treated just as regular kids. But, you have to monitor how that interaction is as a parent, period. So you would do that if your child was on the spectrum or not.
Hey, Trav, I ain't gonna lie to you, man. I'm not really probably built for the holidays. What I mean by that is, if anybody say something wrong to my son, I kind of lose it a little bit. So I'm not the right person to ask that question to. Like, I'm learning more patience with people. My side of the family, besides my mom and my dad, don't really understand, my son's diagnosis or even knows that he's on the spectrum. So a lot of times it's spent having those conversations when there are gatherings, the holidays and stuff like that. And I don't really hang around my side of the family, my side of the family that much. So, I haven't had to do that really. My wife's side of the family, they actually like, my wife has a cousin who's on the spectrum. And so, like, they're kind of familiar with, how to, handle my son. But, even they, I'm not trying to be negative, but it's rough, man. It's hard. So a lot of times in the holidays, I'm not really, I'm having a good time, but on the inside, I'm actually kind of pissed. I'm like, yo, man, yeah, a little bit, man. I'm a little edged. I'm like, hey, man, like, just leave my son alone. Everybody just go have a little drink, whatever y'all gonna do. But it's, it's hard, man, because all it takes is one person just to say something, out the way. And like you were saying, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you were saying, was it your aunt or your grandmother that's kind of old school?
Yeah, so she's a little harder. Tough love, we'll call it. But everybody else is pretty understanding. But my grandmother still kind of has that old school mentality.
Yeah, see, and that would have been me. We leaving the house because I can't deal with it. My grandparents, all my grandparents have passed. God rest their souls. But I'm not really around anybody super old school like that. Like, even my mother. My mother all of a sudden has amnesia. Like, I never got whoopings. Like, she just, I never whooped you, man. I told y'all the story where I came out the shower that one time. Mama got me good, but she not. But with my youngest son, Emiliano, she's like, I never whooped you. What are you talking about? And I'm like, okay, all right. I see. For your grandson, you're gonna be a different person. It's like, look at a totally different person. Like, I got you. So yeah, man. I think what I would tell you if I could give myself advice and say, hey, try to be a little bit more patient with people, because they do not understand unless they're living it, and that's the hard part. You're not around a lot of people, the majority of people that are actually living it. So just give them some type of grace, man. Be a little bit more patient, and try to educate as much as possible. I mean, that's all you really can do at the end of the day. I'm not telling you you're not going to get irritated. You might even snap on a mofo. Like, it just might happen. And it is what it is. Like, sometimes some of my people got to get snapped on. That's just real life. I don't know what to tell people. But, yeah, man, I think, this holiday, and another thing too, this holidays we've kind of like separated and kind of made it our own thing, because we used to do a lot with family, and now we've separated a little bit and kind of do our own thing with our own immediate family. So that's actually helped out a lot. And we actually don't link up with people until later on in the day. So it has helped with a lot of different things, especially, with all of our kids. It just kind of helped because they get to stay at home and relax. We ain't got to be doing a bunch of driving around and traveling. So yeah, Trav, man, I'll just say just patience and grace, man. That's what I got for you.
Yeah, I will say one thing. My kid, my in-laws are 2 hours away, and my wife's youngest of 5. You got to keep an eye on my son. He does better now with his cousins in terms of, like, at home, he's talking, having a good time. He can carry conversation. He's cool. But we leave the house, he used to just act like he couldn't talk and he really wasn't communicative, right? But now he's super open, super comfortable with his cousin. So he's having conversation with them, kicking it, playing video games and whatnot. So from that perspective, he's opened up a lot. It's been beneficial. From the bad part is he doesn't just go to 10. He sort of builds up. But if you don't interrupt him when he's like, getting overloaded, all of a sudden he blown up. So I think it might be super hard to keep an eye on your kid with a brand new baby. Because you're taking care of the brand new baby, your wife, and the kids. So just be mindful of that. So I will say the biggest thing that happens, though, when we go see cousins or family is screens. They get way more screen time than I'm comfortable with. I'm like, because my kids get too much screen, they can't function right. They get snatched up because they had too much screen to mess with them. So I mean, I when it comes to the holidays, man, when it comes to just being around family in general, I think one of the hardest things when you have a kid on the spectrum is that you're always playing out scenarios in your mind. At least I know I do. I'm always playing scenarios in my mind of how I'm going to react if this is said or what I'm going to do if this happens. And it becomes draining, man. Like, cause you're always like, man, you always on, like you said, Trav, on edge. Like, you always on edge, man. And you like, man, I'm trying to have a good time. I tell you one thing though, man, like even when I have an adult beverage, okay, or if I have a little bit of smoke, something like that. It's still, it helps a little bit, but I think that I always in my head, even when I'm feeling good, it always like I'm thinking about scenarios, man. So, I mean, I wish there was like a great solution or a great suggestion, man, but it's hard. It's always stressful. And, I think I wait for the day of just, I don't have any stress, which I don't think that's going to, I think when you have kids, you just always going to have stress no matter what. Like, you just going to have kids. Like, if you have kids, you always going to be stressful. Like, it don't even matter. Like, my oldest kid drove all of my kids to get pizza and a Slurpee. And I was worried as all outdoors. Not because they can't drive. They can drive their ass off. They can. But I just got worried because they all left. And I'm standing there on the porch. And I'm watching them back out. I'm literally standing there. Now, mind you, it's like 30-something degrees in Michigan. I got basketball shorts on and a T-shirt. And I'm just standing there, and they back out the driveway, and they take off, and I'm just looking, and I'm staring. And I know, I see my oldest son look back like, what's wrong with that? Why you standing outside with the shorts on and T-shirt? And I'm nervous. I'm scared. Like, yo, man, these are my kids. I need to come back safely. And you always worried as a parent, man. It never goes away. I know this is like not even what the subject is, but brother, we just going there. It is what it is. Yeah. The other thing I say is, being the youngest of five, sometimes my wife want to be the first one there, the last one to leave. If you put a time frame on it, where you're there for an hour or two, that might help too, versus trying to be there all day.
Yeah,
and it's a bit better. And
timers work.
Yeah, we used to have a game plan. Yeah,
it's a success for us if our kid keeps his clothes on. Because he get comfortable and the clothes start coming off. So if we can keep the stripper contained, we good. So
that's a win. That's funny. And I think all that Ty was saying was natural. I feel like it's also about creating that bubble. And then, you can't really control what other people are going to do. You can control, what you do, what your family does. If somebody says something ignorant, I feel like just know during the holidays, there's going to be one or two ignorant statements being said. Chalk it up to that. If it continues, like, hey, we're out. And, you're going to be your son or daughter's, best advocate. So it's really creating that bubble and just making sure, like that environment is, is supportive.
Hey, Trav, here's a question for the group. It's kind of going off topic. When y'all had, like, y'all first, it ain't got to be y'all first, but when y'all wives had your newborn, how many people did you let hold your child? Because, like, I wouldn't let nobody hold my kid. Like, nobody. Like, literally, we went to church, and this one lady kept trying to hold. I said, nope. I just kept coming in, like, real quick. Yep, nope. And I didn't let nobody hold my kid. Like my mom, my dad, like, in-laws, like that was cool, but like strangers or people you ain't know all that well, maybe y'all was just y'all was little like friends, like maybe y'all was just like y'all they couldn't do it. So was y'all protected like that or
no?
no?
That's a great question. So so far only my sister-in-law and my mom have held him, and it's like, they're close. They've been around, they help raise, and they're all around all the time, so they're cool. As far as like the conversation, me and my wife, we're both on the same page. We're like, obviously it's still kind of weird times. It's basically flu season right now. It's a lot of stuff going on at our kids' school. So I'll just keep it as simple as to say, we're not going to let a lot of people hold him, but the main ones that's like nurturing the family, we're okay with. I think the biggest thing we're really pressing is no kissing. No kissing the babies at all.
That's
Like,
hard
I
to do.
haven't
People be
even
loving
kissed
on
my
little
son.
babies, yeah.
And that may be weird to anybody listening.
Nah.
I'm just not. I'm
Not
not
during this
big on
time.
kissing.
Nope.
Yeah, I'm not big on kissing my kids. If I do kiss my oldest son, I kiss him on the forehead. He's very affectionate, so sometimes he'll want to kiss, and my wife is kind of like, "Give him a kiss," but I'm like, I'm a little worried at that, So that's just me personally.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Oh my God.
Especially, I'm like, so to answer your question, Ty, I was like protective of the nurses touching my son when he was first born. Like,
wow. Okay.
Check his hearing. I was like, no, you don't. Like, what are you doing? And I was over their shoulder, checking, taking notes. Yes, I was just really on edge. The second one, I was like, oh, he's fine. Like, we'll see him in the lobby. Yeah, I'll meet you in the lobby.
He cool.
Yeah, but the first one is always like that.
Man.
Yeah.
Nick, was you like that?
Well, of course. We didn't go outside for like 6 months after my son was born. Let me just listen, we were so like worried about germs and babies getting sick and stuff. And we had a awesome pediatrician when my son was first born. Not to say this current one is bad, but the pediatrician my son had when he was first born was like old school pediatrician. He was like, "Listen, your baby gonna be fine." But just like it was said earlier, when you have your first child, man, listen, Awet was right. You're super protective. You knock anybody out that touch your child that is not cool with you, and so. In my son's like first 3 months, it was just like immediate family. His grandparents that he sees once a month. He sees them now once a month. His uncles held him like one time, but that was about it. And his grandmother, my wife's mother, held him when he was younger. But you have a very select few of people. Those who are around, like Trev, like you were saying, to help in the raising of your child. Those are the individuals that you help that hold. And kissing was a no when my son was first born. And, it took a little while before we even, like I said, before we even went outside. It might have been like 4 months, literally, from the time that he was born to where we first started taking him out places. Because we were extremely skeptical of germs and getting him sick, and even we could put 17 layers of clothing on him, but we just wanted to keep him. You have that bubble mentality, like I want to protect my child at all costs. Eventually, we did, take him outside, and he's now 8. But at the end of the day, it is a parent's job to protect their children, and you protect your child the best way you see fit. And once they're here, like once you can put your hands on them, like you go into protect mode. Is my baby okay? Or the doctor's treating them right? Like I always said, so, everything. I'm over your shoulder. I'm looking. I'm peeking. When my son was born, my wife was like, "Don't stay with me. Go with the baby." Do you know what I mean? Like, make sure you can see him. And so I followed the nurse all the way to a point where I couldn't go anymore, and so we definitely are protective parents. And I don't see especially your first one. I don't see what would be wrong with making sure that your child is as safe as possible.
No, I agree, man. So listen, man, that's a wrap for Autism, Black Fathers and Autism, and we out.